My name is Brendan. I want to welcome you to this special members-only weekly walk. As you might know, we've been doing these weekly walks for the past 3 months or so, and each week we share recent photos of the park, and then we highlight the flora and the fauna and the history of one specific area. And almost all the photos that you're about to see were actually taken in the last week, so you'll have a chance to kind of see the park as it is today. If you've missed any of our other public weekly walks, you can find all of them on our website. And one of my colleagues, Juan and Jose, both of them who are on the back end answering questions, I'll have them drop the link in the chat for that weekly walks page. Now, today you're getting a sneak peek of tomorrow's public weekly walk, but I added some special members only content as a thank you for your support of the Central Park Conservancy. Because we have a little bit of additional content, we're going to take a little bit longer. So usually the walks are about 15 minutes or so, but we'll probably be together for 25 to 30. We're headed to the pool, which is at 100th Street. And before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. Oops, I forgot to click the button. Now we're beginning. All right. You can feel free to use the chat feature to say hello and to comment. You can use the Q&A feature to ask any questions, and Juan and Jose, again, will answer them. You can find both of those on your Zoom control bar. We're also going to have some polls over the course of the program, and the polls help me understand who's with us, but also I want to learn a little bit more about you. So I'm actually going to launch our first poll right now. I would love to learn how long you've been a member of the Central Park Conservancy. And so you should see a poll pop up on your screen right now. It should be pretty easy. You just click a button to vote and then it will go away. And I'll share the results in just a little bit. Okay. Let's go ahead and keep ourselves moving. Now, before I show you the route that we're going to walk, I actually want to tell you how the pool fits into the larger story of the north end of the park. You can actually see a map of the north end on the screen right now. Now, we know that everything in Central Park is man-made. And this area of the park, although perhaps it's the wildest, it's no exception. The water course that goes from the pool through the lock and into the mere, it was heavily designed by Olmsted and Vaux when the northern end of the park was constructed. And they dug the pool, they created the lock, they added huge boulders, which made the 5 cascades, the original 5 cascades, and then they flooded the area to make the mere. The water course was and still is fed by water from the reservoir. However, just because the area is man-made doesn't mean nature didn't play a part. Olmsted famously said, "Use the topography as an underlying skeleton on which to lay other things." And that's exactly what he and Vaux did. The pool's origins can be traced back to one of the only natural water courses within the borders of the park, called Montaigne's Rivulet. You can actually see the black line that's snaking diagonally through the map. The designers used the historic water course as really a template for the one that we see today. This is a section of a very cool map. It's called the Sanitary and Topographical Map of the City and Island of New York. It shows the original streams and marshland throughout Manhattan. And if you actually joined us for the weekly walk in the North Woods, you've seen this map before. Okay. So here is our route. We are going to go all over the place. We're going to see trees and bridges and wildlife, and of course, we're going to see the pool itself. So before we go any further, let's see who is with us. So it looks like we've got a pretty even split all the way down the row. We've got some members who are with us for about 1 to 2 years. Thank you. We're so excited to have you. Looks like we've got a few members who've been here for over 15, which is incredible, and 8 of them who've been here since the beginning of time. To all of you, thank you so much for your support. The Central Park Conservancy couldn't do what we do without you. All right, 103rd Street. That's where we're going to get ourselves started. I heard a ding just a few seconds ago. That was my email, so sorry about that. You might hear a few more dings as the program goes on. Just ignore them. Now, all the original entrances to the park were named. And for instance, we've got Boys Gate, which is at 100th Street, and we have Strangers Gate, which is 106th Street, both on the west side. The entrances are called gates because there was plans to have gates, which never came to fruition. We're actually going to enter at 103rd Street, but this was not an original entrance, so it does not have a name. It's just 103rd Street entrance. The northern end of Central Park is hillier than the southern end, as we know, and you can actually see that represented here. The pool sits at the base of the Great Hill, and it slopes down on either side, so the pool sits in almost a little valley. And we're going to go down the pathway on the left. We're going to stop here. The tree in front of us is a huge ginkgo tree, and it has those kind of signature ginkgo leaves, and every fall, this ginkgo also has the signature ginkgo smell. And that's because this is a female tree that has fruit. You can see them in the image here, the little balls, almost look like green cherries. These are the fruits that actually give off that unpleasant odor, mostly when they have fallen, rotted, or been stepped on. And as beautiful as the pool is, sometimes it has a slight odor as well, especially in the summer. And I'm going to tell you why in just a second. We're going to walk down the path, we're going to turn right, and then we're going to cut across the meadow just to the shoreline of the pool. And here's what we came for. This is the pool. But Brendan, you say, you must be mistaken. This is not the pool. It's a radioactive but well-manicured lawn. And indeed, this is the pool, and it is actually covered with a vibrant green plant, but it isn't grass. It is duckweed. And we've seen a dramatic increase in duckweed in this location in the last 5 years. And to be honest, no one actually really knows why. People have a lot of opinions about duckweed, and I would love to hear your opinions. So I'm going to launch another poll, and let's just see kind of how we feel. Maybe you're familiar with duckweed. Maybe you've seen the pool like this. Maybe you saw it years ago and it's looked different. Regardless of our introductory feelings, we're going to walk together kind of through the story of duckweed and figure out why it is the way that it is. Because some people see the pool and notice this slight odor, and they actually think the water body is unhealthy, and we're going to set the record straight. And you're about to get some behind the scenes content because you have skin in the game as to the health of Central Park. Let's see. Got a few more people who are still clicking in. And yeah, I think it's pretty fair. I will show these results in just a little bit once the rest of folks have clicked in. Now, like I said, some people see the pool and think it's unhealthy. This is the tea. The pool is actually perfectly healthy. In fact, it is maybe too healthy. In short, the pool has actually kind of taken too many multivitamins and it's really super jazzed right now. But in long, the pool is a calm, shallow, and sunny man-made pond with an overabundance of available nutrients. And those nutrients are constantly entering the water system through storm drains and through the city's water supply. And most importantly, we've got nitrogen and phosphorus. Those nutrients, again, are coming from a variety of sources. We've also got material like leaves. There's treated drinking water. And remember, the pool is New York City tap water. There's road pollution, which isn't great. There's rainfall. There's animal feces, which is gross, but also totally natural. And so basically, the pool is a young eutrophic water body, and eutrophic means well-nourished. Because of all these nutrients, the pond flora really thrives. So what is the pond flora? Before I show you what's in it, end polling. Share results. All right, so we're kind of at a 50-50 split. We've got some people who actually think duckweed is kind of nice, and I'm actually in your camp. Most people don't mind it. Some people dislike it, and some people have strong feelings. So let's see where we end up at the end of these next few slides. Now, these next few photos were supplied by our natural areas crew, who I reached out to specifically for this walk. And so this isn't my hand, but what is this hand holding? The most abundant plants that are floating on the surface of the pond, they're all native. And they're duckweed. There's a few of them. There's common duckweed, and there's duck meal, and then there's something called water meal. The most abundant plants on the base of the pond are curly pondweed, leafy pondweed, American waterweed, and then some filamentous spirogia, which are algae. All these plants are signs of a healthy pond. However, even the healthiest ponds can smell, and that's natural, because why the odor? Well, when plant material decomposes, it smells. In the pond, it's a pretty small water body, and it's got a lot of plant material, and so sometimes that smell can be more noticeable here than in other places. There's always a lot of questions of, is duckweed dangerous? No. The answer is the pool can be harmful to dogs and humans, but it's not duckweed that does that. The duckweed's actually a popular source for ducks and other waterfowl. The danger comes from HABs, or harmful algae blooms, which is actually a misnomer because it's not algae, it's a cyanobacteria. And when this bacteria is present, mainly in the summer, it can cause skin irritation in humans, and it's not good for dogs. And we see that in Turtle Pond, and we see that in the Mere, and we see it in the lake, but not as often here in the pool, actually. Now, the fact that we have this cyanobacteria is not a comment on management, it's just a comment on nature, because this happens all over New York City. And the Department of Environmental Protection and the Conservancy are very quick to notify folks with big yellow signs that say, don't go in the water. But in general, it's really just best not to go in the water ever. But as we can see, it's not the water or the duckweed that's necessarily the dangerous part. All right. Now, we know that duckweed, the pond is fairly healthy. It's actually maybe too healthy. We know that duckweed isn't dangerous, but there's also a refrain that people say like, well, why don't you do anything? You know, we do a lot, actually. It just can be really hard to see. So although the water plants are natural, the fact that they're so abundant is because the pond isn't natural. As I said, we get so many nutrients, way more than we would get in the wild if we were out in the forest. And so in a perfect world, we actually wouldn't have this much growth, but we do. And so when the bottom of the pond gets too thick with plants, it can suck up the oxygen. And so we actually go in and we pluck the grass in the bottom. And you can see one of our natural areas crew pulling a huge, huge armful of that pondweed. We also skim the top. So this is sort of like bailing on a boat that has a leak in it. It's temporary and it can be a little hard to see the progress, but it does a lot for the water. But we don't want to remove all the duckweed because it's actually, again, good for the ecosystem. And so we coordinate really closely with the Department of Environmental Protection and a hydrology firm, and we manage all the water in the water bodies. But even with that knowledge, the reality is that because the landscapes and the water bodies are always disturbed by things that we don't know about, because this is New York City, it's really hard to pinpoint exactly why this bloom has happened. And until we have a complete understanding, it's kind of difficult to develop a program to completely fix it, because there's a good chance that if we did something, we might do more harm than good. So we're going to keep at it. And you can see we're going to keep at it cartload by cartload. The sheer amount of work that goes into maintaining Central Park, as you know, it'll make your head spin. But I hope this information maybe helps you see duckweed a little bit differently. You know, on our end, we see a water body that's just doing its thing. And we're going to keep working to figure out exactly what its thing is. But we come to Central Park because we like a wild space. We want the nature. And so it's that fine balance between getting the actual nature and getting kind of a manicured lawn. And this is one of those push and pulls that we at the Conservancy see often. And I'm sure you know as supporters of Central Park. Okay, that's enough about duckweed. Thanks so much for bearing with me. Let's continue on our walk, and we're going to see some other stuff around the pool. Now, as we round the bend, we come to one of the park's rustic bridges, created out of black locust, which is a really rot-resistant tree. You'll see that for most of our rustic buildings and shelters. And I'm going to actually show you a black locust tree in just a little bit. Now, one thing I've realized as I've led these walks, and I've led a lot of them, is I really like the color green. I also really like here in this image that you can see the reflection of the trees and how the clear water kind of bumps up against the duckweed. The reason that you have clear water here is because this water is moving, and duckweed prefers still water. And from here, the water tumbles down the cascade because it kind of starts its journey to the mere. And you can see that here. Now, this is Glen Arch, which you can see tucked in the back. And it's one of the entrances to the North Woods, which is the park's kind of wildest woodland. Now, as all of you know, I'm sure, the pool is one of the best places for fall foliage. And even though it's summer, I wanted to give you a little taste. But if this next taste isn't enough, don't worry, because I've got more coming. So here you can see Glen in late November. I personally love a before and after. Now, bringing us back to 2020, I want to point out the gentleman in the hat. He's sitting at the bottom of the photo. He's got a pink shirt on. Because as I was there, he was staring really intently at the cascade, and I thought he was just meditating. But as I went down, I saw he was actually staring at that bird. The bird is tucked underneath the rocks right by the waterfall. And I think it's a heron. And the photo is really grainy because it looks almost like a paparazzi photo. But to be honest, I really don't know what type of bird this is. We see great blue herons in the park, but the feathers look too white to be a great blue heron, and it doesn't have a white strip on its head. And it also looked like a black-crowned night heron, which we do have as well, but they have stubby necks. So if we have any birders in the bunch right now, please give us a comment and see if you can identify this bird. It also could be that the photo is just terrible. So there's lots of factors at play here. Okay, I want to pop into Glenspan real quick. So if you joined us for the North Woods weekly walk or the member walk on Bridges and Arches, you probably know the history of Glenspan, but I want to point out two features that I find particularly cool, and the features are located on either side of the interior of Glenspan. Now, I tried to get some photos that would fit together perfectly, but I failed. But either way, you can see what I want to show you. On either side of the arch, you can see nooks. The one on the left is actually called a grotto, and we're going to see another very different grotto in a moment. It's a popular feature in mid-19th century architecture, especially with these naturalistic stone structures. And that's because it makes the structure look almost like it's an ancient ruin. The nook on the right used to hold a bench. And I just love thinking about people in the early 1860s or mid 1860s walking through this and sitting in this bench and pretending like they're in ancient Greece or ancient Rome before they go into the Adirondacks. Olmsted said that Central Park is kind of a series of landscapes, a series of moments, and this is a really great example of that. Another feature that I really like of the arch is the exposed quarry marks, and all the stone for these was pulled from the park. And so you can actually see those in the upper right-hand corner of this left photo. There's little tubes, and those are those quarry marks. And once you know to look for them, they are absolutely everywhere, all the way across the park. Okay, let's turn around and stop and smell the roses. Swamp roses, specifically. I found these just in front of Glenspan. And swamp roses are a member of the rose family. They're native to the area, and you can find them along stream beds, which is very fitting considering we are on a stream bed now. If you actually come across these in a swamp, you might find them growing on a bald cypress knee or on a dead log. I'm going to show you some bald cypress here in a moment as well. So back to the pool. I want to stop here and give you another members only reveal. But first off, I would love to know actually if you've seen fall foliage at the pool. So I'll launch a poll. It's a pretty simple one. It's a yes/no question. I just would love to know if you've been to the pool in the fall and are familiar with this firsthand, or if maybe it's something that you are going to do this season, next season, or the season after. I will share the results in just a moment, but for now, I will share a photo. So last October, we were able to lead some autumn amble walks for members. And as luck would have it, we had a photographer with us. And so they were able to get some great pictures. And I love seeing the park as the seasons change. So you've got the pool here, and then you have the pool in October. The colors of the pool are incredible. The colors of Central Park are incredible in general. If this isn't enough, I've got more fall foliage reveals for you in just a little bit. Okay, we made it to the south side of the pool, and we're about halfway through the walk, and we're gonna now see one of my favorite trees in the area. This one. I think this is one of the pool's most magnificent trees, personally. I love a weeping willow. I think it really enlivens the shoreline, and you often find them by water, and there's a really good reason for that. Weeping willows actually take in water by sinking some of their branches into the dirt and into the shoreline. And at first glance, you look at the willow trees and you look at the small branches in the water, and it looks like there's small willow trees sprouting up. But then if you trace that branch all the way back, you can see it's connected to the trunk. And you can see very clearly on this willow on the right side, you've got a whole bunch of branches that are now moving into the water there. As we're walking down the path, you can look back to the left and see the hill, and you can see that slope. So as again I mentioned, the pool kind of sits in a little valley, and the pool is tucked away, and so you've got a lot of people who are running and biking on the drive up there, and if they're not paying attention, you could go right past it. And as you can see, and as you know, that's so tragic because this is such an incredible part of Central Park. Okay, I want to show you where we are because we're about to go off-road. So we're gonna tuck in into some of the kind of coves of the pool. We're gonna come back up to the road, and then we're gonna go down into the meadow and the lawn. So let's see, end polling and share results. This is so exciting. The majority of you have never seen fall foliage at the pool. And so I am so excited to share with you these fall foliage images. And again, I have more of them for you. Okay, so again, we've gone toward the edge of the pool. It's a very popular bench. It's framed by two bald cypress trees. And just like the rustic bridge that we saw, this was created out of black locust. And you can sit here and you can look across the pool, and you feel like you're in the middle of nowhere because the trees on the other side, they shade the path over there, so you don't really see people. And it's really a great place to get expansive views of that fall foliage. Now, I tried to take this picture exactly like the next picture, and I failed, but you're gonna get the point. This is from last October. Bald cypress trees are actually deciduous conifers, so they actually lose their needles in the winter, and that, as they're losing their needles in the fall, that helps kind of clear the way for this view. And across you have some gorgeous maples, you've got some sweet gum trees. This is a really ecologically diverse area of the park, so you have a ton of different trees that give you a ton of different fall foliage options. And this is actually another one taken just in front of the bench. And the duckweed is still there. Okay. No matter the season, the pool is really quite incredible. And we're gonna go back to our season, summer now. Let's head up the path. We're gonna head up the path. We're actually gonna cross over a tiny little stream-ish. And on the left, we're gonna look at the grotto. And on the right, we're gonna look at a little cascade. Now, the small flow of water that's emerging right here, this feeds the pool, and in turn, it actually kind of feeds that northern water course. In addition to being just delightful, this grotto contains one of the many secrets behind the original design of Central Park. This is a pipe, and this pipe goes to the reservoir, so it's about 48 inches, and this has been feeding, pipes from the reservoir have been feeding this water course since the very beginning. And there's sometimes when people kind of hear that the water in Central Park, Central Park is all man-made, that kind of takes away from the magic, but I think it adds to the magic. Because isn't it magical that they were able to create something that was completely engineered but feels so natural and peaceful? Speaking of natural and peaceful, this is the other side. I love the little sprigs that are popping up out of the rocks or out between the rocks. And I also love thinking about the creators of Central Park because they placed these here, basically. They wanted to create the perfect cascade, and they created one that has, little pools that develop and tens of little waterfalls as you go down. Okay, as we head up to the top of the path, I've got a few trees to show you. This is a really gorgeous one. This is an American hornbeam, And the new growth stands out among the darker leaves, and it's partly because it comes down in what are called nutlets, in which you can see that on the right. American hornbeams and European hornbeams, you can find both of them in Central Park, but we only plant American hornbeams now. We no longer plant European ones. And American hornbeams also have beautiful fall foliage, which I don't have a picture of, unfortunately, but it means you just need to come back and look for this tree. And you can watch this walk right before, so you can see the difference. Here is another great one. This right here is European beech. And I encourage you to keep tabs on this tree. If you watched our Fort Landscape walk, you saw my favorite tree in Central Park, hands down. And I actually showed a picture of it in summer and in fall as well. And you should find this tree in the fall, because these are really all year round people pleasers. They've got this beautiful canopy in the summer. They've got great fall foliage, and they have a really beautiful silhouette in the winter. Now, I promised a black locust, and we've got one here. So this sits right in the middle of the field, and although we love these trees at the Conservancy for their rot-resistant wood, because it allows us to create that long-lasting benches and pavilions and everything, we don't love them for their invasive nature, and so we don't actually plant these in the park anymore. But this particular tree has this great bunch of leaves that sit at the base, and they give you a great opportunity to see the opposite leaf arrangement. These trees are often confused with honey locust, which we also have in the park, and they have similar leaves. But if you go up to a tree and you think it's a black locust, and when you get there, you see these terrifying spikes popping out of the tree, then you know it's actually a honey locust. There are a lot of people who ask, you know, why do we have invasive trees in the park? Why do we have invasive plants? And the reason is because it doesn't necessarily make sense to remove huge, beautiful adult trees, even if they do have invasive tendencies. It's just a matter of managing those trees, because just like the duckweed, everything contributes to the larger ecosystem of Central Park, including this next tree, which is not invasive, even though it's not native. This is the Don redwood. These trees were actually thought to be extinct, but they actually found it alive in China in 1941, and then they brought it over to the United States, or back to the United States, and we were able to get them. And here we have one in Central Park, and you can see that very traditional redwood bark in the right, and it's got these really soft needles, and that's how you know that a conifer tree is a deciduous conifer, is when its needles are fluffy. And this is a deciduous conifer as well. Okay. We're at the beginning of the last leg of our walk, which I think is good because I'm going over 30 minutes. We've snaked our way through the lawn to the shoreline. But before we go any further, I want to highlight a little section on this map. Okay, see that blue triangle? The pool was actually originally larger than it is today. In this little area, it's not exactly a triangle, but this area was part of it, and I'm going to show you what I mean. So you can see how lush this area of the shoreline is, and it's got kind of wet dirt on the ground. This area used to be a cove of the pool, and there was a tiny little rock island that was right in this space as well. But like the water in the pool, this is another great example about how Central Park is affected by the city around it. In 1961, there was a water main break on Central Park West, and it flowed down into this area. It was a humongous deal because it actually washed away the pool's little rock island, and it basically filled in this cove. It decreased the pool's surface from 2 acres, which is what it was, to about 1.5 acres, which is what it is today. We're going to actually walk over this non-existent cove, over this little boardwalk, but just watch yourself as you walk, because that tree that's poking out, it'll get you. Just on the other side of this little boardwalk is a rather prickly plant. This is a wineberry bush. And wineberries, they're native to Asia, but you can find them in Europe and North America. They are related to raspberries, and you can eat them. And animals love them. Don't eat them. It's in general not a good idea to eat things you find in the park. They are more tart than raspberries, and they're kind of sticky to the touch. People do use them to make wine and jam. They've also got some very pronounced thorns. And so if you do get close, I would watch out. One more stop. Oops, that's a wineberry. So now you can see what I mean. So we climbed some stairs. We have made it to 100th Street, and this is our final stop. I want to learn a little bit more about, let's see, polls. One last poll. I want to hear what you enjoyed. So if you wouldn't mind, you can pick your top 2 if you want. And we'd love to hear about what you enjoyed so that we know for future member walks what we should highlight. I didn't give you an option to say you didn't enjoy it. So I'm just assuming that you all are fine. All right, what's up with this tree? It's got a really cool story. This is an Osage orange tree, and it's really easy to identify, especially right now. Do you see those little tennis ball-like fruits that are all over it? Here's a close-up. Maybe. Yep. This bumpy and squiggly fruit is the Osage orange, but it's also the reason that this tree is often called a monkey brain tree. And there are seeds inside, but they're really deep, and the inside of this is very sticky. So unlike the wineberries that we just saw, animals actually don't really eat these, or at least they don't get to the seeds. And so the only way for this tree to multiply is for these big fruits to roll and decompose and then plant somewhere else. This tree is what scientists call an evolutionary anachronism. I think this is really cool. So this tree developed fruit like this with seeds deep inside with kind of a sticky coating for a reason. It means that at some point in history, something was really attracted to these fruits, but that something has simply died off. And so now it's got this aspect of it that doesn't really fit anymore. Today, they're mostly propagated by humans because people use them as tree hedges to line roads. And so it's also actually called a hedge apple. Another evolutionary anachronism is the avocado because those pits are so big. Okay. So we did it. That was a very long walk, but I'm really, really happy that you had the chance to do it with me today. I want to figure out, let's see. So it looks like a lot of people really enjoyed, a lot of people really enjoyed the history. It looks like everyone enjoyed everything, which is so exciting. Recent photos of the park, the fall foliage. So now we know a little bit more as moving forward that history is a huge hotspot for you all, and we're happy to hear that. You know what, on second thought, I actually have one more thing that I want to show you. So bear with me, we're gonna backtrack. We're gonna go back the way we came. We're gonna go down the path, and we're gonna go back to that little cascade that we saw right by the grotto. Okay. I want you to imagine that you are sitting at this cascade. You're sitting on a rock. You can hear that kind of beautiful trickle of water. You know, the Central Park Conservancy was founded in 1980. And early in the 80s, they created a detailed report of the state of the park. And they said that the pool had lost much of its vegetation, and it showed significant erosion around the shoreline. And the report actually said, the result is not beautiful, nor is it effective as a wildlife habitat, since that requires lushness and variety. Well, from everything we just saw, including the lush shoreline and the wildlife, I'd say that the Conservancy's restoration projects over the years and the current maintenance of the area, they've obviously been incredibly fruitful because the pool is lush and it is biologically diverse and it is peaceful and it's not just for humans. And remember how I said that I love how the water pools? Well, birds love that too. So for you, a peaceful view of 30 seconds of birds having a great time. This actually ends our walk. I want to thank you so much for joining me today, and I want to thank you for your continued support of the Conservancy. The park has been an oasis to so many people during these last few months, and the reality is we couldn't do it without you. I'm going to leave the room open for a few minutes. We'll grab any last questions. If you're waiting for an answer, you can just hang on. From the Conservancy, stay safe and be well.